Hello, BookTube! This is going to be a read-through of the extended version of the synopsis for my Romantasy novel, The Lord and Lady of Darkness. I'm not going to read it verbatim, I'm going to go through and say some things here and there and whatnot, but before I begin, the long and the short of it is Zanaya is a poet that wishes to be the official bard of Rankai, which is the name of the kingdom I created for the book. And she goes on a journey, falls in love, and there is the darkness, which I'll explain that more when I get to the synopsis. But essentially, if you don't find your true calling, it takes you and then you don't go to the afterlife. And there's also evil creatures, which I named Dammers, which they can project the darkness through them, and bada bing bada boom, if they catch you and bring you to the brink of death, they can do essentially what the darkness does and stop you from going to the afterlife and trade their soul for yours, because I'll get more into it as I read through it. But that's the basis of it, so if that sounds interesting to you, there is a link to my website with a free PDF download. It is in 2 parts, and that is because of the Google Docs, the Google Docs character limit, which I did not know that existed until I was writing this book. So, yeah. Alright, and this is going to be all off the cuff, so if I, stumble around, hey man, it is what it is. I'm not going to try and pretend I don't know, better than I am. Wait, okay, so this is the extended synopsis, which it will go over spoilers, basically spoiling the entire book. So if I'm reading through this and you're like, oh, this sounds interesting, I'd rather read it instead of having it spoiled, click off the video, go ahead and read it. It is a long book though, so it'll take a while to read. I mean, it takes me, every time I go through and edit it, it takes about a week to edit it, so it won't take you more than, I don't know, maybe 5 days if you're just trying to read through it. I don't know. Alright. So, let's get going with the synopsis. Let me get a drink of water. As you can tell, this is going to be as unprofessional as possible. Alright. And as I said, I'm not going to just read it verbatim. I'm going to, probably add some things here and there. But this is the full extended synopsis of The Lord and Lady of Darkness. Alright. Zanaya is a poet that has been struggling to find her true calling in the kingdom of Rankai. In this world, those who do not find their true calling and adhere to it are consumed by the darkness. And in this novel, the darkness is a force akin to gravity, which more or less, it's kind of a mystical force. It's partially understood how it works, and it's something the characters just have to deal with in their lives. There's no way to get rid of it or anything like that. It is partially understood, and it cannot be thwarted unless one is born an elf, because elves in my story they're not fully how Tolkien made them, but they are immortal and then immune to the darkness as well. Due to this immortality, they can, as in Tolkien's works, the elves can die in battle. It's just they live forever if they're not killed by another creature or whatever. And Zanaya has always struggled with relationships, especially when it comes to finding someone who genuinely loves and appreciates her for who she is. Partner, I don't know if that big ass boom came it was on the mic. Alright, ignore that. Partners have come and gone over the years with her, and they typically leave when they find out that her dream is to become the official bard of Rankai, which that's gone much more in depth into in the book, obviously. And her poetry and music consume most of her days, not to mention her pet cat Lily, which there's a lot of symbolism in there with the name of pretty much everything in the book, except like the main man character, King Braxton, is a play on my name, and then his brother Brexton. That's a play on my IRL brother's name, and then the elf queen is named Brandia, which is a play on my sister's name. So that, other than that, everything else has extremely deep symbolism behind it in the novel. And some of this include names, colors, etc. And there's foreshadowing all throughout the novel that a keen-eyed reader can decipher, which I'm not going to go into too much depth on all the, all the little intricacies and stuff. A major symbol throughout the story is the color purple, which this is, I would say it's probably the major symbol in the book, which you can dive deeper into that and what the color purple kind of represents and whatnot, if you would like to. This is not only symbolized by Zanaya's name, which her name isn't spelled like the flower, but it is representative of the purple flower, Zanaya. And she also has an obsession with anything purple, which, if you have read the... I don't remember because I know that's in my Curie letter. I don't remember if I put it in the synopsis or not, but it can be assumed that both main characters in this novel have what is these days referred to as level 1 autism. And as well as... okay. She also has an obsession with anything purple, like I was saying, especially lilacs, which are her favorite flower, as well as smell. Her clothes are mostly purple, she wears lilac perfume, and washes with lilac soap, etc., etc. That's all in the story, and it has some nice symbolism there. And this is an interesting part that I didn't come up with right away when I was writing, but it's something that I learned about, and I'm like, oh, that would actually fit really well. It can be assumed that Zanaya has I guess it's considered a disorder called, I don't even know how to say synesthesia, which explains why her instrument, I haven't got to that part yet, but it explains why her instrument is a lute and her special bird, what she meets them after birds are attracted to her music, is a cardinal. This because synesthesia, I can't remember the exact definition, but essentially you see colors and sounds, or see colors and sounds, like see colors and hear sounds as, or something like that. You see like instruments and animals and stuff as sound, or I don't remember exactly. But if you look up synesthesia, you can you get a good explanation. Zanaya is able to communicate with and understand birds, which is a clue to the future reveal. Okay, so this is where you probably want to click off the video if you don't want a big spoiler. But, I mean, it's not... I don't know. I don't know how, like, obvious it is if you're reading through the book, but... Because in the future, it is revealed that Zanaya has harpy blood, and she is part harpy. And the flower that Zanaya labels Braxton with is a carnation, specifically a purple carnation, which that goes along with her synesthesia and how she sees, like, flowers represented as people or noises and music and stuff, etc. I'm probably not explaining synesthesia very well, but the character has that. And she describes Braxton as a carnation because to her he is a rose without the thorns, which that's a line in the book. She doesn't have to be willing to bleed to love him, but still is. And this all also, like the flowers, also show a deeper connection to her mother who passed away when she was little, because her mother's favorite flower was a lily, and then that's also why she named her cat Lily, etc., etc. And her mother's passing eats away at her throughout the story, and then Braxton, the main man character, helps her cope with this grief over time. Can't even speak. She shares stories about her mother with Braxton and also others throughout the novel, but mostly him. They meet at the start of the story and take a liking to each other, and Braxton becomes the first person to take genuine interest in her poetry. He has his own backstory of struggles, which are alluded to and explained throughout the novel through conversations with other characters, and like actual conversations, not just like, oh, here's some past, you know what I mean? It's like people who write their books where they just give exposition through the characters' words. There's none of that in the novel unless it's like actually pertinent to the characters talking together and what they would actually say in real life. So, and Braxton's parents, which are the former king and queen, originally I was going to have them alive, and I'm like, but I want to have the main character, or the main man character, be the king. So I'm like, it really wouldn't make sense if his parents were still alive. I mean, you can make it work if you know what I mean, had it set up a certain way, but... Alright. But they passed away an undisclosed amount of time in the past, and he is much more timid than his father, who ruled with an iron fist, yet he was able to create times of peace, which are gone throughout the novel. So the entire outside of the Dammer attack, which they have to stop at the border of Rankai, Rankai is more or less in times of peace, and there's very low crime rate, etc., etc. That's talked about a little bit into the book. So, and his father was also abusive to him, his mother, and his brother, which led him to be satisfied by Lilith's abuse, which you'll find out in a little bit that she is the main villain of the book, and she is Braxton's abusive ex. Great wars were fought for many centuries before the book happened between the dwarves to the west of Rankai and the elves to the east. I kind of made that's a thing that the king says in the book, how they used to remember it. I thought that was it's a little corny, but like elves to the east and then neutral to the north. The people to the north are neutral, like to a extent even greater than Rankai, and then dwarves to the west, which is the W in dwarf, so that's why, yeah. And then the book follows the Tolkien trope of elves and dwarves not liking each other, but that's played up throughout the novel a bit, especially between Lilith and the dwarves Hax and Hux, which are the two dwarves along on the adventure. And in the past, Rankai lent its strength to ally with the elves, as their powerful magic is not so simple to trifle with, which, that's not the only reason. It's not gone into too deeply in the novel, because I don't want to dwell too much on the past and just ramble on about that stuff, but they more or less sided with the elves because that is essentially the better choice and also the easier alliance to maintain. And elves throughout the entire universe I created are the only race that can cast magic. There are severe limitations on this, as they must meditate within special golden tents in order to build the charge to use. Now, in the story, there's like one line that says Lilith smuggled the golden tent out of the Elven Kingdom, which alludes to the fact that they're not supposed to be taken outside of the Elven Kingdom unless it's a time of war. Which leads to further things in the story, because Lilith is able to charge inside of it and whatnot. Most elves are not too powerful, but Lilith is one of the most formidable elves to ever live. She is extremely powerful, and her power throughout the story is shown here and there, and especially in the final battle. So, and it's also explained that is one of the reasons why the elves were not able to just completely massacre the dwarves, and is also why you will find out later that Lilith desires a child from Braxton. When Zanaya and Braxton first meet, she is wary of the possibility he is only seeking sex from her, even though historically he has not been known to the public as a womanizer. He quickly quells these worries as he takes genuine interest in her poetry, music, and art. They spend the night together at Zanaya's house and are respectful of each other's space and boundaries. They end up cuddling for the night before meeting up with the Fellowship that will be going on the main journey of the novel together. The adventurers gather for breakfast at the castle before heading off towards the border. There are rumors of a gathering of Dammers, which are not the main villain, but they're kind of a side villain that show up at the end of the journey. So they're kind of like the big baddie that isn't built up over the novel, so to speak, but it's the end goal. And they must do this before Zanaya can become the official bard of Renkai. Braxton believes, more or less right at the beginning, that she is surely meant to be the official bard, but this will further be solidified throughout the novel. And as I explained, Dammers are creatures who were once human. They roam the land searching for a victim to replace their own lost soul with another to gain access to the afterlife, which they have to bring the person to the brink of death and then activate their ability, if you want to call it an ability, in order to swap their souls. And they are humanoids with gray skin and a red circle upon their forehead, and the circle is how they project the darkness through themselves. And when someone is taken by the darkness, if the reason for them being taken is of a helpful nature, as with Zanaya's mother, they go to the afterlife, which Zanaya finds this out partway through the novel, and then is happy that she knows her mother for sure went to the afterlife. It's not gone into why her mother was taken by the darkness or what she did to be taken, but because of this, it can be assumed that it was something helpful, most likely towards Zanaya. But if it was of a nefarious nature, the person is doomed to become a Dammer, and then that's how Dammer come into existence. And if one is killed, they cease to exist in any plane. Zanaya is revealed to be somewhat of a trained fighter, as her father crafted her a special foldable spear in memory of her mother, and taught her how to use it. The companions are then all introduced. Let me get a sip of water. This is going to be a long video, but alright. The companions are then introduced. Zanaya, the future bard, Braxton, the king. Brexton, the king's brother. Hax and Hux, who are twin dwarves, and they each have their own personalities and looks, and I'm not going to go in depth on that. Delilah, who is Braxton's childhood friend and best friend. Lilith, who is Braxton's ex-girlfriend and elf. And lastly, there are two animal companions. Lily, Zanaya's cat, comes along, and Laz, Delilah's dog. And in the story, I describe Lily, but Laz is left up to however the reader wants to perceive the dog. It can be any dog breed the reader desires, more or less. And Lilith is immediately hostile upon discovering that Hax and Hux are dwarves, because there's a whole background thing going on where elves and dwarves still don't like each other, and throughout Renkai, some people, I suppose you could say racist towards dwarves, if you want to use, I suppose that's the correct term. As within Renkai, or within the universe I created, all the races are just like dwarves, elves, etc., etc. There's no individual, there's different skin colors of humans, but there's no races, if that makes sense. And Hax and Hux were hiding this about themselves. Even the King Braxton was unaware, even though, because his brother Braxton is way better friends with Hax and Hux, as will be shown throughout the novel. And then Lilith is revealed to be Braxton's ex-girlfriend, and this causes brief turmoil, but emotions eventually settle down, and they head off towards their first destination on horseback. Lilith is blatantly jealous of Zanaya's relationship with Braxton, and it is revealed that she was broken up with because she desired to have a half-elf baby with Braxton, and he did not desire this at all. And it is shown that Zanaya is willing to stand up for Braxton against Lilith, even with her powerful magic. Braxton's submissive and conflict-avoiding nature makes it practically impossible for him to fully shut Lilith out of his life, which is shown throughout the novel. He forgives her over and over and over, regardless of the evil things she has done and does to him, which Zanaya eventually helps him overcome this throughout the journey. He believes that Lilith will one day find the path to righteousness, and it is eventually revealed, as I've mentioned, that Lilith was extremely abusive to Braxton, both mentally and physically. And this once again shows his aforementioned nature, as he is terrified of Lilith, even though he himself is a very mighty warrior. I don't give exact measurements of the characters or anything, but Braxton can be assumed to be approximately 6'7", and extremely warrior-like. But he could stand up to her physically, even when she is because when charged with magic, elves can access extreme strength and speed, etc., etc. But even when Lilith is fully charged, Braxton is strong enough to stand up to her physically, which that's talked about throughout the novel. Lilith mentions that their battles are actually, because it's not shown, but they would practice against each other, and it is said by Lilith in the novel that their battles are actually in Braxton's favor. And all this enrages Zanaya, and across the journey, she stands up to Lilith multiple times, including smashing a glass against her face and slicing her with it. Before this, they all stop on their first night of the journey. They set up camp, and Delilah asks to talk to Braxton in private. Which, I haven't talked much about Delilah yet, but like I said, she is Braxton's best friend from childhood. During this private conversation, she expresses to him that she loved him for a long time and convinces him to have sex with her. Braxton feels as though he betrayed Zanaya afterward, even though he had not yet given her the ring that will bond them together. This drives him crazy with guilt, and he admits what happened to Zanaya. He explains he was going to give her the ring that evening. Zanaya doesn't know what to think, and even decides to talk to Lilith to find out if the entire ring story is true. Lilith tells her that it is, and she and Braxton, when they were about to date, were not a couple until he gave her the ring in the past. It is then revealed that if they put on the rings and are not meant to be together, the darkness will take them both, and the reason they were not taken when Lilith did it is because she's an elf and would be immune to the darkness, and it can be assumed that since she's immortal, she is immune. And all other immortal beings would be immune as well. Delilah confides in Braxton and reveals her big secret, that she is in fact a half-siren, and has never once used her powers on him, even growing up, until they had sex earlier in the day, because she desperately wanted him to love her genuinely, not because of her powers. Then Braxton admits he did love her in the past, but could not give up on Zanaya for her. Zanaya is hesitant to believe this story when Braxton and Delilah inform her of it, but Braxton is desperate And Delilah eventually uses her powers on Zanaya's cat Lily, which convinces her that she is truly a half siren, because they have Zanaya hold Lily, pet her, give her treats and all that, but then Delilah uses her power, and the cat instantly leaves Zanaya and walks over to her. So, in this world that I've created, people who are half human, half something else, typically appear completely human-like, but maintain the other half's abilities, which is why Delilah appears human, but has the manipulative abilities of a siren. Zanaya plots revenge against Delilah and almost hurls a chair at her, but stops herself when she realizes Lily is still in her lap. Alright. Zanaya and Braxton make up, and she finds comfort in the fact that he never truly betrayed her trust of his own will. The two of them drink special elven wine. Zanaya are brought along and get drunk, and this is the catalyst to them deciding to put the rings on despite their relationship being so new, and that they may instantly be taken by the darkness. They tell themselves later that they likely would have even if they were not drunk, but that may or may not be true, and it is never 100% revealed if it was or not. It's left up to the reader. This is where the personalities of Braxton and Zanaya slowly mesh over time, and they become more like each other throughout the journey forward, even picking up on each other's silly phrases and quirks, which those are scattered throughout the novel, as you'll come to find. Their next stay on the journey is in a town and tavern. This is where the story takes a dark turn. Alright. This is where Lilith finally decides to play her hand and become the main antagonist of the story. She already more or less was, but this is where she truly steps into the role. Because Delilah kind of was an antagonist for a little bit. But then she's not really, because Braxton does not want their friendship to be tainted. And is willing to pretty much do anything for that. Lilith desires to have a half-elf baby with Braxton. They are one of the rarest races in the entire world I've created, and they can only be made between a powerful elf woman, such as Lilith, and strong human leader, such as Braxton. Her reason for wanting such a child is that she desires to wipe the Dwarven Kingdom from the face of the planet, and since half-elves are extremely rare, I've given them insane power. They have, excuse me, I don't know if you heard that or not, but I'm not cutting anything out. The ability to use unlimited magic is what half-elves have. They don't have to charge or anything. Braxton explains that half-elves are extremely volatile, and historically have always ended up committing self-delete, which that's not the terminology used in the synopsis, but YouTube's kind of crazy. Later in the story, Lilith's full potential is shown, but this drains her power super fast. A half-elf would not have this issue. She wants to raise the child to be a destructive force never before witnessed. An underlying desire to impress her father is alluded to. Lilith has been denied for the final time and approaches Braxton to inform him that she shall be taking what she wants by force under threat of murdering Zanaya. Dread fills his body, as he knew this would one day come when he tried to move on from Lilith and find love again. He and Zanaya discuss the matter. Lilith is fully charged, and Braxton dares not confront her physically. Zanaya and Braxton enjoy the night in town together and grow their relationship, which there's instances of this all throughout the novel. They go on little I guess you could call it a side adventure together. And play little games and whatnot. They discuss different ideas, such as fleeing back to the castle, to the Elven Kingdom, or Dwarven Kingdom, But Braxton knows Lilith too well and knows that she is willing to do anything to one day get what she desires, so she will just chase after them over and over and over. And Lilith is also the main liaison between the elves and Renkai, so they can't exactly kill her, because that would be grounds for a bloody war regardless of the reason given. He tells Zanaya he is willing to die for her alongside her. They contemplate going to the afterlife together in one final stand against Lilith, but they decide against it. True love has finally found them, and they wish to not give it up so soon. Braxton is willing to suffer for true love. He gives in to Lilith's demands and shows up to her room at the end of the night when he goes around to check on everyone. I thought, these nightly check-ins, I believe, are a good addition to the novel, where it kind of gives a chance to conversate between the main characters and all the side characters alone without anybody around, more or less. So, and this is the part where, yes, it is on the page, but my novel isn't accepted yet. If the publisher desires, this part of the book can just be alluded to, as well as all the sex scenes. They can, if necessary, they can just be taken out and alluded to, but they don't use body part terminology, if that makes sense, and they're more fitting with the mood of the novel, I guess. But then Lilith assaults him, etc., and gets what she wants from him. I'm not going to go in depth on that in this video, but you can imagine the scene if you would like. And Zanaya thinks about taking one final stand, and she stands outside of the door listening with her spear, and she tells herself if she hears a cry for help from him, she will go in regardless of the fact she would be instantly doused in flame by Lilith. No such plea comes, as Lilith had cast a spell on the room. Lilith slices up Braxton's body and leaves him to struggle back to his room with Zanaya. He collapses on the floor, and Zanaya's in pure shock at the gravity of the wounds. She helps him into the tub to clean him up, and he has her go to Delilah to get healing salve, as Delilah is the Fellowship's medic. Healing magic and spells do not exist in this world, so that's the reason for the salve. It's kind of a replacement for healing magic. It makes people heal quickly. Not insanely quick, but a reasonable pace. Delilah helps, and they eventually make it to bed for the night with Braxton covered in the salve. Braxton tells Zanaya Lilith is out of magic and technically could go kill her, but he doesn't want to risk it, and she declines anyway, as making sure he is alright is more important to her. The next day, Hax, Hux, and Braxton leave. They haven't been a big part in the synopsis, but there are interactions with them from the beginning of the novel to now, to build their characters and all that. Braxton does not inform them of the wounds or what happened, and also does not tell Delilah how it happened. And throughout the entire novel, Braxton, Hax, and Hux are never told what happened, but Delilah eventually finds out. Braxton has, I already mentioned that, he's interacted with them multiple times throughout the story, but they don't offer any major plot points at the moment. Braxton is the jester of the group, so to speak, and there's comedy sprinkled in. I kept it limited, but there is comedy in there, here and there. Hax is the bold dwarf among the twins, and Hux is extremely quiet. Their personalities and arcs develop along the way. Zanaya and Braxton go on a date the next day, and she helps him a lot due to his injuries. She plots revenge on Lilith, and she doesn't forgive Delilah for what she did, but she accepts it as a moment of weakness and decides to put all her energy towards hating Lilith. Delilah is revealed to actually be half elf and half siren, not half human. Lilith makes her admit this after what happened to Braxton is revealed to Delilah. Excuse me. Lilith acts as if it was some good deed. Delilah stands up for Braxton and is appalled by Lilith's actions, even though later on it is revealed that Delilah and Lilith are in an intimate relationship. So this shows that to Delilah, her friendship with Braxton overrides love and nonsense, for lack of a better term at the moment. But this relationship is between her and Lilith is nice because siren powers don't work on elves. So Delilah has finally found true love that she doesn't have to worry is only because of her not being able to fully control her powers, because it is mentioned that since she is not a full-blooded elf, that kind of messes with her abilities and makes it harder for them to be controlled. This is where Zanaya smashes the glass on Lilith's face in a rage. Lilith does not retaliate, as after she got what she wanted from Braxton, she swore an oath not to hurt her or Braxton. But she warns them that she will defend herself if necessary. Zanaya takes care of Braxton and helps him recover the extra day they stayed behind with Lilith and Delilah. She tells him stories of her mother, and he tells her stories of his childhood. They play silly games together throughout the entire journey that are on page. There are some good ones in there. And I think I mentioned that later. I created my own game for the novel, so card game. They visit Zanaya's father, Raoul. He cooks for them. Delilah and Lilith are made to sleep outside in their tent during this. And Braxton and Zanaya play Manicola and pick peaches together, which peaches are also another symbol in the book. Zanaya shows him her childhood room. Delilah tells them of a friend that they should pick up before they reach the border, a djinn named Ash. Djinns in the novel can read minds, but humans have an innate resistance to this. Lilith expresses fear of djinn, which makes Zanaya make fun of her for it. Zanaya claims she will instantly become friends with Ash and likes her a lot already. Later in the story, Ash is allowed into Braxton and Zanaya's mind to use her djinn abilities, which this helps them get their bottled up emotions out. Delilah and Lilith go ahead of Zanaya and Braxton to prep Ash for the mission. Now this, it's not really a twist, but this is kind of a big reveal moment. Where Zanaya decides, because throughout the novel, Zanaya and Braxton discuss getting married and their future together. And Braxton says that he will propose when they get back home, and that they plan on having sex for the first time when they get back from the mission to celebrate. But this is where it's kind of a surprise. Zanaya decides herself to propose to Braxton on top of a hill as they watch the sunrise together, instead of waiting for him to do so upon their return to the castle. This takes him by surprise, and the couple are beyond excited. And she also gives him a special love poem that she retrieved from her dad's, that she wrote for her true love way in the past before the novel. And then this is also when they decide to have sex for the first time, instead of waiting before they go home. And all those scenes, like I said, they're on page, but I didn't use body parts or quote like derogatory language outside of swearing, which there's not. The main swear word is the F word, which that's more or less the only swear word in the novel. There's probably some I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, there's a few in there, but it's used for impact, so. And I feel leaving some of like the body part words out, I feel that makes the scenes more intimate and all that. Then they make their way to pick up Ash. Her and Zanaya hit it off immediately. in the story, because sexuality-wise, in the story, if you didn't pick it up on it already, Lilith and Delilah are both bi, and then Ash is 100%, well, I don't know why I said 100%, is lesbian. Ash finds Zanaya attractive, and Zanaya reminds Ash of her deceased partner Mila, which becomes part of the story later, and she has her own struggles, or Ash has her own struggles and all that. Then Braxton, Zanaya, and Ash end up deeply connecting over their shared losses throughout the journey and afterward. They make it to the border and are greeted by the other companions that had gone ahead. Eventually, some of them go scouting, some to get wood, and Lilith decides to stay back and meditate. This, right here, boom, big reveal, is the big twist in the book, where Hax and Hux end up betraying the trust of Braxton and kidnapping 2 harpy eggs to send them cascading over the cliff, which is where the Fellowship is camped at the border, because they figure that that is a good lookout to see the dammers. And throughout the novel, it is discussed that dwarves naturally despise Mother Nature and elves naturally protect it. Lilith, since she was not off with everybody, catches them and makes them put the eggs down. Push comes to shove, and Hax, Hux, and Lilith all fall off the cliff. Hax and Hux die, but Lilith, since she had meditated earlier, is able to use all her magic reserve all at once to send a gigantic wave of fire at the ground, slowing her fall enough to let her live, although she is extremely critically injured. The others make it back from scouting the dammer numbers and witness the tragedy that has unfolded. Delilah and Ash help Lilith. While they're up top getting supplies, Zanaya takes this opportunity to punish Lilith. She stomps on her throat and goes on a monologue about how Lilith deserves to die, but this is where Zanaya shows... This is where Zanaya shows that she has changed throughout the story and become more like Braxton, and she pulls back and does not kill Lilith. This marks a major turning point between Lilith and Zanaya and Braxton. And then Braxton and Zanaya go to return the harpy eggs. And as I stated earlier, this is the big reveal, where Zanaya finds out she is in fact half harpy. Earlier, Ash revealed that Zanaya is not a pure-blooded human when she showed off their Jinn powers, because when she uses her powers, each race or mix of races gives off their own color in her eyesight. So then she was able to tell that Zanaya was not fully human, but at the time, it had not been a light that she had seen before, so she didn't know what it was. So she couldn't just straight up tell her. And then the harpies, it can be assumed, it's not stated directly on the page, but it can be assumed that they can tell when somebody else has harpy blood. Then it is also revealed that Zanaya's mother hid this fact from her to prevent her from being bullied, and unfortunately her mother passed away before she could help her learn to fly. The harpy queen Zora takes her into the air, and Zanaya gets her wings, and they spring from her back, and this is a big symbolism moment. And if I had a movie, that TikTok song that's been going around that says, "One day I will grow wings," would be the absolute perfect song for this moment. Her wings also give her newfound strength, and she finds out that her harpy blood, which can also be called seraphic blood, makes her immune to magic, which means she finds out that she could have indeed saved Braxton from Lilith's assault, and Braxton tells her she never could have known, and that she should not beat herself up over it. They return to camp, and it is revealed Braxton left to take the bodies of Hax and Hux to the nearest town and will not be back for the big battle. But we'll return later to clean up everything. So that right there is kind of just the excuse, so I don't have to have the other characters take everything with them, because Zanaya and Braxton will be flying back, so. Zanaya plays her lute, and birds flock around as they have before in the story. This amazes Lilith by the power, and she has a revelation. She tells Delilah she is thinking of killing the baby to make up for what she did, which causes Delilah to break down, as they were supposed to raise the child together. Braxton and Zanaya discuss this with them, and he tells Lilith she doesn't want her to kill the baby. He says it won't fix anything, it'll just make everyone sad, and then she agrees not to. Lilith expresses deep regret. Zanaya thanks her for saving her two harpy sisters that they returned. Lilith is impressed that Zanaya considers them family. She tells Zanaya Delilah her and herself are all seraphics, thus family. What happened can never truly be atoned for, but the remaining companions grow closer in this moment. Lilith then casts a fertility spell. This, obviously, there's stuff that goes on in between all this, but that's obvious. Lilith then casts a fertility spell on Zanaya, so her and Braxton can be guaranteed to have a baby girl, as they have dreamed throughout the novel. Because throughout the novel, I haven't discussed it yet, but there are various dreams that characters have on page. Some are of worry, love, the future, etc. Dreams the characters have of the future are not always what eventually happens, but all dreams involving Zanaya and Braxton's future and their daughter Azalea can 100% be assumed to what happened after the book. Like anything that a character dreams about that happens after the book has ended can be assumed to actually occur eventually. Then the big battle commences. All the Dammer are slain. Braxton and Zanaya sustain injury, but nothing major, as Lilith has very powerful defensive magic that they use. I won't go into detail, but then this, quote, easy triumph is supposed to show how strong the bond between them truly is, regardless of what happened. Lilith then proposes to Delilah after the battle, and they celebrate and eventually make their way home. Braxton is carried in the air by Zanaya, which Zanaya's newfound strength allows her. It is stated that her carrying Braxton feels like carrying a peach. Which in and of itself carries symbolism. Ash is invited to live at the castle to get a breath of fresh air in a new place and perhaps find a new partner. Lilith and Delilah go along to help her pack. Braxton and Zanaya visit her dad on the way home, play some games, act silly, and get romantic. Once they get home, Zanaya's ceremony finally commences, and they head off with Ash to Zanaya's first bard mission. The three of them bond, and this is where they help Ash get over her anxiety of finding a new relationship after her partner Mila had passed away. After returning from this mission, this is the one time skip in the book. It skips ahead to the day of Braxton and Zanaya's wedding. The wedding scene is brilliant. Delilah, Lilith, and Ash all give speeches. Zanaya and Braxton pour their hearts out. I feel like the vows they read to each other, whew, that's probably the best part of the book. They pour their hearts out to each other with vows they wrote themselves. This is what the entire story was leading to. Zanaya throws her bouquet, and it is caught by a child that reminds her of herself. They invite this child, who is named Zarya, which, Zarya and Zanaya, close names. There's a lot of things alluded to here with what happens between what I'm about to say and Zarya's mother, Arella. They are invited to sit with them for the rest of the night at the wedding. Their group plays a card game, the one I created for the book. It is called a Stacker, which the name, like, I guess you could say if it was somehow created into a real thing, you could change the name, but then Zarya has a wonderful time. Her dream was to see the queen up close, but she got much more. She even got to fly with Queen Zanaya. Before Zanaya and Braxton take off on their honeymoon, it is revealed that Zarya's dad is abusive. Lilith promises to kill him, and Delilah says she'll practice her dismissal magic on him so he won't go to the afterlife. This is after it is revealed that Delilah is part vampire, and vampires in this world do not really follow any of the typical tropes. The only thing is Delilah enjoys blood and has retractable fangs, and this plays into the story in a few ways. Before this, Zarya takes a liking to Delilah as she thinks vampires should be treated better and knows all about them, which that can be shown to have extreme symbolism there with all that. During the wedding reception, the elf queen Brandia, who I mentioned at the very beginning, makes an offer never before made. 2 elves are willing to give up their immortality to have it granted to Zanaya and Braxton in order to keep the kingdoms at peace. They have a long discussion and eventually decide to have it done, as it will also be granted to their daughter if it is done before she is born. They take off to the Elven Kingdom on their honeymoon. They are granted their immortality by Elf Queen Brandia. Braxton reveals that to honor the peace they have brought over the years, he has been king. The elves have made statues of him in Zanaya. Never before has there been a statue of a non-elf in the Elven Kingdom, so this is a very big deal. The last big reveal is that he was able to convince them to also build one of Zanaya's mother. Zanaya breaks down crying and is in awe of seeing her mother in statue form, and this is the perfect end. This is actually right where I was originally going to end it, but then I added a little extra scene at the end where she starts giving birth, and then Braxton rushes her to the Elven Hospital, and the final scene is Zanaya and Braxton holding their new baby girl Zanaya. Or Zanaya. Azalea, sorry. Alright. But that is the end of the synopsis. Boom, this was over 50 minutes. And I'm not going to edit anything, but that's everything. Like I said, link in the description to a free PDF. And I appreciate y'all.